Hello, Dan.
Hello, John.
How are you?
I'm well, thanks. How are you?
It's great to be with you. Certainly, I've talked about this. I'm very excited to talk to you today and hear your story and all the wonderful things you're working on. So I appreciate you making the time.
Well, John, you're a great addition to my life recently. It's great to have you in Vistage with the rest of the crew.
Yeah, it's been a phenomenal journey, which we'll dive into. So let's thank you for joining us on maximizing potential. This is where we focused on helping individuals become the best version of themselves. So I'm confident that you will be able to help us and our audience be able to do that today. So why don't we start with a little bit of your background? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Wow, where do I begin? It goes way back. I'm a Hispanic kid from Phoenix, Arizona, born to an outrageous entrepreneur, risk taker that lived on the edge, and I got to see how my dad really moved in the world as an entrepreneur. Really helpful, and I'm a first generation college grad. I went to phenomenal school, got really lucky going there. It just happened that my best friend's father, who I just loved and admired, was a orthopedic surgeon, and
Mm.
he put his arm around my shoulder at one point and said, "You know what? The college I went to would be great for you." I would have never thought of the college, Colorado College, and it was awesome. And then just kind of walked through my life in a various other iterations professionally to get where I am today as an executive coach to some amazing business leaders. And the short answer to how I got here was I followed my life. I just kept going through the doors. It kept opening up. And this is great. I think I've never been as satisfied and fulfilled in my work as I am working with high potential senior leaders and helping them to get what they want in life and in business. And contrary to what many people believe, people I know you and I work with have huge hearts as big as their head and want to do the right thing for the world and for their business. And it's just a privilege to be in that spot.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. And it's especially nice when you're able to help people get answers to important questions or help them achieve their goals and objectives, right? Which is really purpose-driven work that I know you are incredibly passionate about, as am I. So that's great. I love your story, right? There's always a richness to people's stories. We're first of being Hispanic, Latino, first gen college student, right? Which is a significant challenge for people, right? I think people sometimes, if you haven't had that experience and you're the first member of your family to go to college, it comes a great deal of pressure. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, as you were saying that, it occurred to me that this is kind of the unique thing with leaders and entrepreneurs is I didn't know it was a big challenge at the time, right? It was just my life happening. And when I look back, it's like, oh, wow, it was a challenge. And add to that, John, I think you know this, I'm dyslexic. And so I was going first generation to private college. These kids at dinner table had spoken about very different things than we had and had an expectation of what they were presented with. And I didn't. And I was also struggling with dyslexia, and it was tough. It was tough. I got through though, and that's just my journey.
What are the types of things that you did that helped you navigate through? I mean, sometimes you just don't know, right? So you're just putting one foot in front of the other, but there's still a tremendous amount of adversity. So what did you do to kind of push through that?
I married right. Honest to God, I married right. I married a woman that was just, she showed me the way in so many ways. And we were, from our backgrounds, almost couldn't be more different. And so, her and I have a great yin yang, and she helps ground me, and she helps me stay in the pocket and trust myself.
Yeah. It occurs to me, right? The power of having a partner on the journey. None of us can ever achieve greatness alone. There's always someone, whether that's a mentor, a partner, a friend, in your case, a spouse, mine as well, that kind of pushes you when you need to be pushed and pulls you when you need to be pulled. So that's great that you have that opportunity.
In your comment, I think, is one of the big lies in life that we assume that we can do it alone. There is no
Mm,
alone. There is no
yeah.
alone. In fact, I'm in the process of maybe naming my leadership framework to Theory B. B standing for belonging.
Mm. Well, tell me more about that. I mean, we're going to get into that later, but to your point, there's a lot of, if you think about the work of like diversity, equity, and inclusion, and then now it includes the word belonging, and so much of who we are as people relates to a desire and a sense of wanting to belong. Even people who say, "Oh, I'm great. I can do this. I don't need help." The reality is we all have some desire to be included or belong or to be seen and valued. So tell me a little bit about that work.
Well, I think we all do belong and sometimes simply lose sight of it. In fact, it's impossible to move through this world in our natural condition not belonging. We are irrevocably hanging together in this thing called web of life, or what National Geographic, I just read this, refers to an ecosystem as a bubble of life. Right? We're in that bubble, whether you know it or not, whether you like it or not. In our fast-paced world, we lose sight of it. And when we lose sight of that, we lose sight of being able to experience awe. So if you want to belong, follow love and beauty.
So say more about that. When you say follow love and beauty, what would that mean?
Well, belonging is a destination, and it's also a beginning. It's where we start and where we come back to understanding and realizing where we are. And when you find belonging, guess what else is there? Has to be love and beauty. They're just, that's, you have a sense of awe when you go out and you get the goosebumps from the sunrise or whatever it may be. Just take note. What does it feel like? Well, it feels like love. It feels like it's beauty. It's perfection. It's me.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I think about the time of year that we're in, right, at the new year, new beginnings, so much of it is about relationships and slowing down. And I love the piece that you're talking about, right? To me, I call it a system. We're all a part of a system, whether that's, in a dyad, a triad, a team. Most of the people who have the greatest level of satisfaction, it's because they
I
enjoy those relationships.
I love the fact that you bring up systems, right? Because that foundational part of my leadership framework is based on the natural system that scientists and mathematicians call complexity science. Complexity science tells us that we are a system of systems, right? We're an ecosystem of ecosystems, kind of like those Russian doll things, but it goes out in every dimension. That's just who we are. And so humans are complex systems, and the organizations in which they live and perform are complex systems, as are their families. And they're all connected, and we're all interconnected, and that's why we look for resonance and harmony and synchrony, love, belonging, and beauty.
Yeah, well said. Well, that's what we're going to talk about today. So how do we navigate through that? So that's great. So one of the questions I like to ask leaders is, how do you define success? So how do you define it?
Oh, I define success by being wind in the sail of the people I work with. I really following their sense of what success means, being carefully, deeply attuned to what moves them and what fulfills them, and then helping them to get what they want without me telling them what to do. Right? That's the secret of coaching. It's the right questions and the right energy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you define it more in a purpose-driven way, right? And that's clearly a strong driver and North Star for you, which is excellent. So what advice would you have for your younger self if you had to do it over? What advice would you give yourself or give to others?
Relax. Enjoy the ride. Live more in the present moment. Be less aggressive. Yeah, go look at more sunsets, and man, love and beauty. A little bit too ambitious, taking after my dad. He had this sense that he had to bend the will of the universe to his, and of course, that's where I got it. And my life changed fairly dramatically when I realized I could just surf with it instead of fight against it.
Yeah, it's a nice segue to my next question, right? Because you and I both work with a lot of CEOs and executives and leaders, and Some are have stronger personalities than others, right? So, what do you do? What do you find that the most successful leaders do in their organizations, and what makes them most successful?
Wow, kind of a lot of what I've already said, right? It's coaching isn't something people need. Coaching is something people want. And it's really, I think maybe the word's ironic that those that are the most high performing generally are the ones that want it the most. Their growth mindsets, and they love and appreciate and have experienced incremental growth throughout their lives. And so for me, success, I will not accept clients who define success, though they may not say this, by the amount of how many toys they die with. Whoever has the most toys wins. Nah, nope. And a corollary to that is, in order to feel like I belong, I have to show up as the smartest guy in the room. Nope. It's just they're not really coachable. Some people are coachable, some people aren't.
Was that always a belief that you had, or did that evolve, right? Because I find myself when I was younger, particularly as somebody who didn't grow up with a lot of means, and going to school with people who did, right? I mean, kind of that was a bit of my definition of success, was having resources, being able to have nice cars, have a big house. For me, that's evolved. But was that always the case for you, or did your perspective or definition shift over the years?
So I was a incredibly embodied and happy athlete. And so competition was in me in a big way, but in kind of a very joyous way. I found my original belonging in the world as an athlete. And boy, I felt like I belonged, right? I had the privilege of being the captain of a whole bunch of my teams, and that was life. And in that was competition. And I held through a long part of my life, you win or you lose. And I think it was later in high school, early in college, I read or started grabbing hold of the win-win concept. And God, it made life easier. So it was an evolution. And then, you and I both know that for some odd reason, the way the universe works, we learn our best lessons in the most painful moments. And, in those moments, if we're paying attention, what happens is the ego drops. I merge more deeply with others and myself, and I have more belonging. So I think one of the things, to go to the earlier questions, is that I think a lot of leaders have been indoctrinated about what leadership is. And it's the guy who's up front and wins. And that is not really helpful, because it doesn't create a sense of belonging. That's when you get the most out of yourself and others, is when you connect more deeply, integrate more deeply, and together self-organize and accelerate. So there's this, again, back to the harmony resonance. Leaders who know that, who live with that, will be able to help other people catch it, to be inspired, to drop in, to be together.
Yeah, and as you describe that, it makes me think of, like, organizations are systems, right? Families are systems, and their definition of success and what people strive for is often established within that system, right? And so how do you get leaders to, what stories they tell themselves and how they shift some of that mindset
I love
in
that
a more meaningful way?
I love that question. And the answers might be a little bit odd, but I'll unpack it a little bit. I help them to embody, to feel life in their body, and to stop intentionally being dispassionate to their surroundings for the purpose of thinking better. That is a losing proposition, especially today. Because we know that many minds always beats the single mind. And we can literally create neural pathways within our organizations, but it's not going to come without trust, which then brings belonging, which then allows us to integrate and see you later. It's just, and that's people who can create work that people love and with which they resonate. It's going to make the world a better place in the moment, but it's also going to create better results and more sustainable results. And as I sit here saying this to you, it sounds so obvious, but there is a paradigm and indoctrination out there that as the leader, I have to have all the answers. And if you're not following me, everything I'm saying, then I'm not a good leader. Oh, slow down and listen up and allow others to inform you and teach you. Yeah, that's right. Your employees and your leaders on your team, if they're not teaching you and you're not learning from them, there's not much of a connection there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's well said. And maybe the big question, right, for people who are listening, right, is like, how do you help your clients do that? How would you help someone be able to tap into that energy and that perspective?
You've heard the word before, but it's relax. Just relax. Relax into yourself. Allow yourself to be, right now, John, when I say that, you probably feel your belly. When I say relax and drop into myself, I feel myself. It's state of being is a quality of your present situation, the quality of your present experience. And so we want that experience to be a connected experience. Drop into yourself, connect with yourself, find resonance in your own life, slow down. And I will often take my clients right in the midst of my coaching into some mindfulness practices, call it meditation, so that they can relax and be more present with me. And that right there is the beginning of transformation.
I love that. And in particular, as I think about meditation, right, I used to try to do meditation early on and I got restless, right? And it's a journey. So some people are very advanced in it. Others are in a much more primitive state. But, I learned along the way different, tips or techniques I could use. Like, one is like wiggling my toes, which sounds bizarre, but centers you in some ways, right? Or like fully breathing, or even tactile, like touching very lightly. So it works.
I'll give you one that you really know really well. I know that because I've had dinner with you. Tasting wine. When you taste wine, it's a perfect example of a mindful moment. You smell it. That's in your body. You can't do it with you if you're distracted with the past or the future. It's right here in the moment. You smell it. And you can actually start tasting it before you taste it. You maybe even see the color, and then you taste it. It's a very mindful moment. It's a very present moment. And so everyone, whether they know it or not, they're connected and they're having mindful moments. Most of us, and especially if you've accomplished anything in life, you know how to grow. You know how to, and you know how to calm yourself, to soothe yourself as necessary. It just, when you become even more mindful of it, it just expands, right? You know that. It just gets better and bigger. And the sense of belonging and connectedness just grows. That's the pot it's planted in.
Well, and I think, you've said this repeatedly, right? Living in the moment. It is such an important leadership principle, right? We get so distracted and we're moving so fast. We're trying to do so much. It's just like staying present and living in the moment is such a powerful approach. That's excellent. Thank you. So what motivated you to get into this line of work and do executive coaching?
Well, I think an honest response is I never really had that plan. So I didn't, and this is so odd for me, so aggressive in my ambitions. It just kind of happened. I experienced coaching. The first time I experienced coaching was Catherine White, and she was on the inaugural board of the Exit Planning Exchange, an organization that I created out of Babson College for business owners for succession exit planning. And she just showed up different than anybody else at the board. And she is a highly credentialed coach. And I went through a business divorce, and I thought, I'm going to talk to Catherine. And it was amazing how much quicker and with so much less pain and self-doubt I got through that business divorce. And then shortly thereafter, I hired another coach, but this was more for marketing and branding. And at one point in like the third meeting, I remember where I'm sitting, and I'm actually writing about this in my book. She said, Dan, why don't you trust yourself to be yourself?
What a great question.
Bam. And it was perfect for the moment. It was so perfect that as she said it, I put my heart on my chest and I said to her, Cindy, I don't know why you asked that question, but I know it's a big question for me. And I have the urge to cry, and I'm not gonna. So I'll journal on it after this. And the journaling was actually simple. It took about 4 minutes. And obviously, I pinpointed where I was not trusting myself. And it solved a conundrum that I'd had for 18 months, just like that. So I said, holy crap, what is this technology? And I started reading about it. And it made me better in my life. It made me better in my work. It made me connect more deeply with my clients. And I just kept opening my eyes, and I started taking courses. And before I knew it, I was coaching. And then Vistage came by and said, hey, why don't you join us?
Beautiful. That's great. I mean, I think I want to come back to the Vistage piece, but I think as you describe this, right, and a lot of the work that I do with executives, one is like working with purpose. Like, what is it that you truly are trying to accomplish? And then the other piece is like, what is your identity, right? And so many of us are trying to do something, be something, accomplish something that we don't truly know what matters to us. And then so for you to be able to have the tools to be able to do that, is really powerful. So that's great. So talk to me a little bit about how you help your clients. You talked earlier about some of the techniques that you do. What are some of the challenges that your clients face that that you think would worth be sharing with to our audience?
Great question. One of the things I am doing now, the purpose of my book, the book is called Power to Coach, Developing Leaders Around You. For the last few years, I have been teaching CEOs how to coach. So when, just imagine you get coached and you, like the story I just told, and bam, it's like, wow, this happened fast. This was great. Well, naturally, I want to know as a leader, I want to know what you did and how you did it so I can do it with my leaders. And so I became a coach because I got coached. And what's happening for me is many of my most responsive, most coachable leaders are having the same experience. And I found myself on a very regular basis preparing them for conversations with their senior leaders. Well, how do you do that, John? You know coaching well enough. You're not going to go tell them to do what to do. And if they don't follow you, fire them. You're going to say, let's get curious, right? Let's open them up. Let's relax them. And why don't you ask them questions to help them get what they want? And so you have this, one of the leadership paradigms I really like is dimensional leadership. And it has 5 dimensions: leader up front, leader alongside, leader from behind, leader in the field. And right in the center is leader within. That touches every one of the other circles. And so giving a wider, bigger palette to the leader, that they don't have to be what they think they have to be, always the guy, the person, the woman up front calling the shots. You can come alongside and co-create, or you could even drop behind and support. Coaching is leading from behind. It's you empower others. And that's what leadership is. And that's what leaders should be focusing on, is not demanding their leaders, but opening and growing their leaders.
Yeah, that's very powerful. I think to your point, right? So many leaders, want others to lead the way they lead, as opposed to helping people find their own voice or finding their own center or helping them achieve what's important to them. And I also think, as you talk about these questions, right? I mean, so many times people ask questions to be the smartest person in the room, or, to solve the problem at the intellectual level, as opposed to asking the question that's going to unlock answers for that particular individual or team. So that's really powerful. And I also love the fact that you've built an operating system to be able to do that. So tell us a little bit more about the contents of your book and your approach and model.
Yeah, boy, is that fresh in my mind. I mean, I've been living deeply in that. So I think we're going to call it, like I said earlier, Theory B, B for belonging. The book is The Power to Coach, Developing Leaders Around You. And the Theory B has 5 pieces: move, No, the first one is merge, then move, then trust, then choose, and then emerge and integrate. That's the conclusion. That's what happens. So the merge is just to open up and understand that you are living in a beautiful bubble of life. What is your bubble of life? What's there? What's happening? Just so it's just like a step in and be still before you go into a room. What do you do? Just what's there, and then it's once you're open to and in the moment of what's there, your body is in your brain together. The body brain is going to naturally sort for the signal, because you walk in that room as a leader, you have purpose, you have goals, you have things that have to get done. You got shit that has to get done. And so the day you wake up, what's here? Where am I? What's happening? And then you start sorting for the signal, right? And that's a very embodied sense. You get it, you allow yourself to be attracted, and you attract to yourself, and you start moving, much like surfing. And then once the waves start swelling under your feet, you start getting some momentum. You want to go back inside, trust yourself, ground yourself. You can do this. You don't want doubts. So that moves into choice, which is the stories we tell ourselves and how we can self-architect, self-author our lives by understanding how to master the moment. So choosing the response, the stimulus comes in, got a little gap, you can make a choice on how you respond, right? So mastering that, and then what happens? The highest definition. Let me say it this way: integration is probably the best definition of optimal health that I have come across. I got that from Dr. Dan Siegel, and I think he's right, because what happens is as we start going through this process, we are like any complex system, moving from chaos to complexity into self-organization. And so my 5-step process helps us to master the self-organizing piece of it. And as I master that for myself, and it's about connecting, it's about differentiating, it's about integrating, and then emerging into something new, because that's what we do. And we want to nurture that and accelerate that, not just in me, but with my team. But I can't nurture that in my team unless I nurture it in me. So that's why coaching and one-on-one is helpful. And that's my book. I just told you about my book.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, I love the self-discovery aspect. To your point, I mean, we are truly trying to transform and evolve, right, and live a life of purpose. And and it sounds like you've come up with a really good model and methodology and approach to help people to be able to do that. That's excellent. So what's the timeline for your book, and how would people learn more about it?
My business is mindfulceo.life. Mindfulceo.life. Well, we were hoping and expecting to have the introduction and the first chapter highly polished by January 15th. But I got some information this morning that it might be stalled. So we were hoping and expecting for the book to be published in September, and moving hard through all that ground, from finding the publisher through getting a printed book and then going live. It's been a learning process. So I'm going to start releasing chapters soon, and I'm going to do it to a small group of people, but I'm going to make it a kind of a formal, my thoughts is it's going to be a formal group, kind of a study group of, here's chapter 1, give me feedback, and let's talk about the content. Let's learn a little bit about it together. So that's in the happening, I think.
Yeah, that's a good interactive way of engaging people and also getting valuable feedback, which I know you value. And absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about Vistage. You talked about it earlier. That then you found Vistage, or I think they invited you to become a part of the community. So tell folks who may not have heard about it what Vistage is and how you came to be a part of the organization.
Yeah, Vistage found me, and I'm glad they did. Vistage is a CEO peer group. Well, CEO and leadership, business leadership generally, peer groups. And as you know, John, peer groups are so powerful. And especially in the Western culture of business leadership, Business owners can feel really lonely and disconnected, and it's really hard to create the magic that way. And so when they get in the room with each other, they feel a fellowship, they feel a brother and womanship. And you saw I caught myself there.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful, the combination of executive coaching with that fellowship is really powerful, and it gets incredible results.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I mean, my experience has been the same. I think it's really powerful for anyone, right? Vistage does a great job of creating the context for peers to work together, right? In a non-competitive setting where, frankly, you get objective, unbiased perspectives to help you, make rational and important business decisions. And to your point, I've been surprised by the number of CEOs and executives who in some way feel some level of imposter syndrome, right? You talk about an election, most people are like, I don't feel it. But when you get deep down to the core, they do. And it's this challenge of trying to figure out how to best navigate the pressures of being in the top seat, and or making decisions that, frankly, if it's a family-owned business or even if it's a much larger public enterprise, the pressures that come with it. And so to have a forum to be able to do that with a chair like yourself and or myself or others has really been a powerful experience for me as well.
John, so I want to touch on something that has become more and more clear with me. I've done this for almost 7 years, is that it's a microcosm. And the group becomes really close because you meet one day a month for a full day. And in time, you get to know one another really well. And as a group, 15, 20 CEOs in a room, it has its own identity. And it runs into bumps itself. And so a CEO, depending on how you and I facilitate and help out and how the rest of the group comes into the conflict, can be an amazingly powerful way for the senior leaders to see how to move into their own conflict with their leadership team. It's really awesome. So when you run into some conflict, say, oh boy, here we go. I got an opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one of the things I tell people when they ask me about it, right? It's really the one place you can both practice and learn and grow on how to be a great leader, right? And get actual real-time feedback and input and support, again, from people who don't have an agenda because they're not board members and not in the business. They fundamentally are truly trying to help you become a better leader, and just becomes a really powerful way of doing it, which you just shared. And I fundamentally believe everybody could benefit from having a strong peer group.
Yeah, I believe the same. The magic, though, is in those in the room believing that.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not for everyone, to your point, right? You have to have a growth mindset and be curious and want to give and get, which is such an important part of belonging, to your point, back to the origins of the conversation, right? Belonging is fundamentally about, being able to learn and give and receive and be a part of a community.
Yep.
That's excellent.
All that.
So I know you do work, you created, an organization called Mindful CEO. So tell us about it.
Well, Mindful CEO is my executive coaching organization, and we do one-on-one coaching, but we also teach coaching primarily to senior leaders, and we do senior team retreats and training, facilitation.
That's great.